Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabber and alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we are going to be discussing our winners and losers of the first round of the NBA draft. We were live reacting to the first 15 picks yesterday with our buddy Jason Timpf, but that wasn't enough, Logan. We've got more takes, we've got more content to give you guys. By the way, you know what I realized? This is our 7th show in 5 days. We're freaking content machines, Logan. We're about to chill this weekend, but the NBA doesn't stop. We don't stop. So let's talk about this draft. Who is the first winner who stands out to you from yesterday?
I just gotta shoot a podcast. Yeah, I was fiending, man. All right, this one I think is a no-brainer. We got to talk about the Mavericks. They're obviously the big winner of this draft. You couldn't have painted a more perfect path for the Mavericks post-Luka Doncic trade. Nothing excuses it. Nothing can ever excuse that deal, but they were thrown a life raft, and that life raft's name is Cooper Flagg. And we've talked about Coop ad nauseum for months now, back to the NCAA tournament, all of the prospect shows we've done over the past month, but so I'm not going to go over the entire Cooper Flagg spiel, but they're getting one of the best prospects since 2000. He's an all-time defensive prospect, and the Mavericks should have one of the best defenses in the league if everybody can stay healthy next season. I mean, they've got athleticism everywhere. They've got guys who can defend at their positions. Everybody can rebound. They've got supreme size, and Coop's just one of the best prospects I've ever seen. Yeah, I don't have a ton to add about like Dallas and anything new to say about Coop. I'm really excited to see him play, and I'm really excited to see what he can do offensively in the absence of Kyrie Irving early on in this season. But no-brainer, the Mavericks get one of the best prospects we've seen in since Wemby, but of the modern era, and Dallas is a huge winner for that reason.
They got the best player by far. They got the guy with the most upside. They got the guy with by far the highest floor. They got the guy who's most ready to contribute right now, even though he's only 18 years old. They got pretty clearly the best defensive talent in the class, and they got, in my opinion, the best offensive talent in the class. Like, yeah, they did all this after they traded away one of, if not the greatest talent in their franchise's history, and they lucked into this. But it's going to be perfect. I think that Flagg is going to have top 50 level impact as a rookie. I think it is going to be an interesting challenge for him early in the year, having to take on some pretty significant ball handling responsibilities in the absence of Kyrie, but I am very interested in seeing what he can do there. The handle has to improve for him. We'll see how consistent he can be as a pull-up jump shooter, but I do love his passing at his size, and I think there's clear upside for him as a creator. It's just probably the least polished aspect of his game right now, but the mismatch attacking, the transition scoring, the cutting, the shooting off the catch, the offensive rebounding, paired with elite versatile defensive impact as a really impactful help side rim protector and roamer and great defensive rebounder and a guy who can defend on the perimeter. Like, for a team that wants to build an identity on defense, this dude is an incredible, incredible fit on top of being a fantastic talent. I think Dallas is going to be the second best defense in basketball next year. I think Houston, Orlando deserve to be mentioned. Obviously, I'm presuming that OKC is going to remain the best defense in basketball. But after that, just the combination of size, length, athleticism, great defensive personnel in the front court with so many awesome bigs. Now with Flagg, who can be elite defensively at both the 3 and the 4. I prefer him at the 4 and AD at the 5. Seems like we're probably going to get heavy doses of him at the 3, AD at the 4, and either Lively or Gafford at the 5. That group I don't like as much offensively, but defensively, it's going to be absolutely ridiculous. Like, could be one of the best rebounding groups we've ever seen, because you're playing a great defensive center at power forward, you're playing a great defensive power forward at the 3, and you've got a super legit defensive center at the 5 as well. Offense is going to be where Dallas's season is decided next year. Can they be legitimately good on that side of the ball? And Cooper Flagg is a hugely important part of that formula, but the defense is going to be insane. And this opens up an opportunity for them to be a legit playoff threat that didn't exist in the same way after the Luka trade. And obviously more significant, now you have actual longevity. You have an actual window that extends beyond these next couple years. You have a future. You have a present and a future now, all thanks to Cooper Flagg, and that certainly makes them big winners. I'll shout out the team that picked right after them with the number 2 spot. I think the Spurs absolutely nailed this draft. I thought that Dylan Harper was very clearly the second best talent available. This is a guy who is a uniquely gifted downhill guard and a uniquely exceptional finisher, 68% at the rim, gets to the line a ton, and he's a very good passer, weaponizing all that rim pressure. Just a guy with an offensive ceiling that is extremely high, and he has the tools to be a solid defensive player at least. He's got really good positional size, almost 6'5" with a 6'10" wingspan, but it's all the things that he does at such a high level offensively that you love. But then I also thought that they nailed their second pick at number 14. Carter Bryant is the exact sort of player who I want to be putting around a core of Dylan Harper as my lead guard and Wemby as my all-time great center. Like, I just want a bunch of awesome, rangy wings who can shoot, who can score in transition, who can assert themselves athletically, and who can defend their asses off. And I wasn't the highest on Carter Bryant because I think there is a lack of offensive skill and dynamism in his game, but I think this is an ideal landing spot for him, and it's great value. He can do all that role player stuff that you want, and if I'm the Spurs, I just want to stack up those guys because, yes, they have to figure out what are we doing with this super crowded backcourt now with Fox and Harper and Castle, 3 big point guards who want to get into the paint, who want to have the ball in their hands a fair bit. I think one of those guys is going to be gone. It's not going to be Dylan Harper. He's the best talent out of the bunch. I think he's going to be better than Fox, and so they nailed that pick, and they got a really nice complementary player at 14.
Definitely. The Spurs are my next winner of the draft as well. The Fox dynamic is going to be interesting this season because his contract is up after this next year, after 2026. So the Spurs have an interesting dilemma here. They could extend him and ride this thing out for however long and then choose to trade him down the line where I still think he will have value. Or if they're moved enough by Harper or Castle's play, or if they think they're far away enough from real contention, they could just decide to deal De'Aaron Fox mid-season, which is an option. But either way, I think they made the most of both of their draft picks. Harper, to me, was the no-brainer pick at number 2. I expect him, like you, Carson, we've talked about this a lot, to be an all-star one day. He is a special, special talent. And to add Carter Bryant, specifically to this team, like you mentioned, you're not going to ask him to go above and beyond. That was my concern with the landing spot with Carter Bryant. What exactly are you going to ask him to do? Well, you've got all the ball handling you need with the deep guard rotation. You've got all the scoring punch that you need with Wemby and the supporting cast. So Carter Bryant can just come in here, defend at a high level, rebound at a high level, do some transition scoring, and be an off-ball scorer, which I think is the ideal role for him. So I also think the Spurs crushed this draft and got good value for Bryant. I think this is about where he would have gotten picked. Like you mentioned, he goes top 8, top 6. I'm a little concerned about that, but I think 14 is really good value for him. The other team that I think now there is a little bit of a drop-off here in terms of talent for who teams acquired. My next winner, and this is kind of in totality of the offseason so far, is the Atlanta Hawks. Now, interrelated with this is the KP deal for me because they acquired him for such a low asking price of Niang and a second-round pick, but it really has to do with the deal that they made with the New Orleans Pelicans to go from 13 to 23. One, I thought they got really good value by getting a guy like Asa Newell at 23 who complements Trae Young and just fits an easy archetype alongside a lead guard like him. He's a 6'9" big man, so he's not a true 5, but he's a rim runner, a screen setter, and an interior big man who is really athletic. And so I just think that when you can put athletic big men alongside a guy like Trae Young, just athletic defenders, big, strong guys, that's always a guy that's going to work alongside Trae. But it more has to do with the first-round pick that they acquired for next season. And that's going to be an unprotected first, which is going to be the best of Milwaukee or New Orleans, which it's weird, Carson. I almost, I know a lot of people have issues with the way that the lottery is structured now in terms of percentages. I actually like it because I think it incentivizes teams to not deal away recklessly and carelessly their first-round picks unprotected because it gives more inherent volatility, right? Bad teams are always not going to want to deal away their first-round picks, but I think it disincentivizes teams that are in that, 8 to 14 range from dealing it away, because there is a chance that that could jump up. But I think there's a very high chance that Milwaukee deals Giannis Antetokounmpo and is not going to be very good next season. I think there's a very high chance that New Orleans is going to be at the bottom of the Western Conference, and that could be a very high first-round pick. So I just want to give the Hawks credit for what they've done in this offseason. Ironically, I think they've gotten better for next season and added 2 players that can contribute now. Porzingis is obviously the jewel, but I think Newell can also come in here and give them great minutes. But they're also good for the future, where next year they could have a top 5 first-round pick potentially, and at bare minimum, they've added another unprotected one that they're going to be able to draft with in the lottery. So I think the Hawks have played their cards immensely well this offseason so far.
I really like what the Hawks did too, and I definitely would have liked for them to sit there at 13 and draft Carter Bryant. I think he would have been a really good fit at another defensive-minded wing, and he is really going to be one of the better defensive players in this class. Like, really all my questions about him are offensive. I think you look at 6'7" with a 7-foot wingspan, really good vertical athlete, good help side rim protector, good screen navigator, can make recovery plays, get in passing lanes, like lots of matchup versatility for him, multifaceted defensive impact, and then he's just going to play a role offensively. I think that's great for San Antonio. They can put together a hell of a defensive core, and I think it would have been really nice for Atlanta. That being said, when an offer like this presents itself, you take it. I'm not so in love with Carter Bryant. I don't think that the Hawks so badly need another wing when they already have Reece Shea and Dyson Daniels and Jalen Johnson, and they have some good talent there, that I'm going to pass up on a chance at what is almost certainly going to be a lottery pick next year. Like, you're telling me both the Bucks and the Pelicans are making the playoffs? I say no chance, dude. Even if the Bucks don't trade Giannis, and I say this with the utmost respect for Giannis, that roster around him sucks. I do think they make the playoffs still in that East. I think actually seeing point Giannis for a full year could be pretty fun. They had some really effective offensive stretches when he was really handed the reins with Dame off the floor. But man, that roster is bad around him. If he gets hurt at all, if he misses 20 games, that could derail the season potentially. But it's more so the Pelicans, right? I mean, this is a team that we'll talk about later, but they're in this sort of state of chaos. I have no idea who's going to be on that roster next year. It seems like they're in a transitional phase, and regardless for them, if Zion goes down, which unfortunately he will, like if I'm setting the over-under for Zion games played, it's probably 28.5. They're an abomination with him off the court. So I think that has a potential to be an extremely valuable pick. And like I said, you only move back 10 spots. I don't love Asa Newell. I see the vision for Atlanta going out and getting him, getting another big who can play in their rotation. And they have some nice options there. Like, obviously, KP, I think, when healthy, is going to be great for them at the 5. But then you have Onyeka, who's an undersized 5, who you like more as a backup. And then Asa's another guy who can bring some size. But like you said, not going to anchor the 5 because he's not an impact rim protector. He is a monster offensive rebounder, and he is a nice play finisher. There's just some stuff with him where he can be quite power forward-y, and I say that because of the size, the lack of rim protection defensively, although he is a nice versatile defender. He's a good defender, just not that rim protector. And then offensively, he has the flashes of touch, but is it consistent enough? Like, he shot 40% on runners and hooks combined, 43% effective field goal percentage on jumpers. These are decent numbers, but that's ultimately not going to be efficient offense if he's relying on that a fair bit. But he does have the play finishing potential. I just think, like, we've seen it more out of the dunker spot. We've seen it more off offensive rebounds. Actually playing off the roll, I think you saw some issues with him where if he wasn't catching the ball right at the basket, he could be a little out of control, and he wasn't super aggressive, kind of prefers to pop and play from the perimeter. And that's where I worry a bit about him finding an offensive role. I still like it, though, because I think it's a fine value pick, but the lead story here is you could be picking number 3 in next year's draft, which is going to be a hell of a draft at the top. Like, that's a huge upside play for them.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I agree. Newell's very limited as an offensive player, but I don't really think that's his role here, and that's why I do like the pick for him going to Atlanta. When you've got a guy like Trae Young, it's like, all right, let's just put athletes and defenders and play finishers around him, and that archetype can be really successful. I do like his feel and positioning, though. I will give him that credit. I like he's instinctual cutting and rebounding. Like when a shot goes up, he's crashing hard. You mentioned the offensive glass. I think he's going to be a problem there. And he is a good cutter and in the dunker spot. But beyond that, I'm not really confident in his offensive game at all. He's got an intriguing post game, but it's no way polished. He will not initiate from the perimeter. He lacks a handle. He lacks burst. And he's got some upside as a floor spacer, but that's like saying that anybody has upside as a floor spacer. You know, I'm not really super confident that he's going to be reliable. The only thing that I will say is he doesn't hesitate in a way that other prospects do when shooting. I think that he's comfortable putting the shots up. I just don't know. I don't know if it's ever going to be like something that, you know, we're really trying to get him open for looks. But again, you put him alongside a guy like Trae Young, I think that's a really good landing spot for him.
Yeah, it's a totally fair point. There are very few players on the planet who are better set up to amplify a play finishing big than Trae Young. So, like, if you're going to get the most out of him, I think it's going to have to come with him rolling more, maybe, again, popping a little bit less, not being too in love with the jumper. But Trae is going to spoon feed him some looks around the rim. I don't know how much they'll play together because probably Asa will be playing more with the bench units, but they should get some minutes together, and I think that that is definitely an ideal pairing for any young big. Speaking of young bigs, man, can we give a round of applause to the Phoenix Suns, who absolutely nailed their pick at number 10 with Maluach, who's one of my favorite prospects in this draft. I had him as my number 4 guy on my big board, and this is at the most glaring position of need, not just for Phoenix, like just about of any team in basketball. Their big man situation was such a joke last year. Now they get a guy who has a really high floor and considerable upside. He's 18. He's only been playing basketball 4 years. He's 7'1" with a 7'7" wingspan. He weighs 250 pounds, and he moves pretty darn well for that size. He's versatile in terms of the pick and roll coverages. He can play defensively. He can even switch a little bit. He's got active hands. He's a good rim protector. He can make recovery blocks, really productive offensive rebounder, and then just an insane finisher around the basket, above the rim stuff, off the roll, 99th percentile efficiency. This is a massive, coordinated, extremely athletic human being who also has shown some really nice flashes of touch, 75% from the free throw line, has shown you some of that touch shot making in the lane that can be such a differentiator for big men in the NBA, and he plays his ass off. So I just think there's so much to like with him. I think they nailed the value. I think they nailed the position. And they went even more all in on center because they traded for Mark Williams as well, giving up their 29th pick in the draft and a 2029 first rounder that is probably going to end up being in the 20s because it's like the worst of a number of teams, but teams that should be in the playoffs. So for that reason, that move I'm not as high on. I think that that's a lot to pay for Mark Williams just when you consider the massive availability questions, him not nearly playing up to his defensive potential, but he's a hell of an athlete. He's a talented, productive, offensive player, role man. And like the Suns just desperately needed bigs who can play. So they get a guy who's probably going to be their starter in Mark Williams. And then they get the guy who, in my opinion, is their actual potential cornerstone at center. The guy who projects as a better two-way player long-term, certainly the better defender with some real offensive talent as well in Maluach. I have no problem with them going after 2 centers. The price was a little bit steep for Williams, but they nailed the Maluach pick so much. I'm happy that they didn't go away from picking him just because they traded for Mark Williams. That would have been a mistake. They got easily the best guy on the board, and I commend them for that.
I completely agree. The Suns are a big winner for me too, and specifically with the situation that they're in and their positional needs. That's why I think it's a win. One, the Suns are in no place to they have no incentive to lose basketball games. You know, some teams do. And the reason I mention that is it's like if you're a bad team at the bottom of the East or the West and you have no route to playoff contention, it's like, okay, we can deal away some win-now players and we'll get our pick. The Suns don't own their pick. The Rockets have all of them. So over the next few seasons, the Suns have to win as many games as possible. And you look at the guys on their roster, it's all guards, it's all wings. The lone big that you can really depend on that was under contract heading into the draft was Nick Richards. And so now I really like their center and big rotation. And regardless of Mark Williams' health, now with these three guys, you're at least going to have 48 minutes of solid big play, big bodies on the interior who can protect the rim and rebound at a high level. And while it's a simple archetype, these are not flashy, sexy moves. They are winning moves, and I applaud Phoenix for doing that. I'm really glad. I mean, again, you've got all the guards that are going to shoot, Carson. You don't need any more ball handling. You don't need any more shot creation. You need guys in this role. So I commend them for getting guys in this archetype, and this is what they should continue to do the rest of this offseason. Get athletes, get guys on the wings who can defend at a high level and try to be as competitive as possible. They've got some of those guys down the roster. Ryan Dunn is still here. Royce O'Neal is still under contract. Grayson Allen will be a good off-ball guy. So I think you continue to tap in there, but I like the way they're building out this roster. Obviously, I didn't like the value that they got back for Kevin Durant. It didn't seem like there were a lot of potential suitors. I have my issues with Jalen Green. I'm not going to get into all that, but I do like what the Suns have done in this offseason, and they addressed their biggest position of need. And, Maluach, I know he was 4th on your board, Carson. He was 5th on mine. To me, one of the best value picks in this draft. I'm so confident in him being.
Yes.
He's got such a high floor, and like you mentioned, dude, I think people, maybe because, I don't know, I think people sometimes lump players into, they can just stereotype players because of certain issues, and I think people are really pigeonholing Maluach into a role that isn't true without really watching him. Like, I think he has offensive upside and just more upside in general than people are giving him credit for, even though he's a high-floor guy. So the Suns are a big winner to me, and I think he's going to be impactful from day one for this team.
Big, physical center, massive human being, going to set good screens, going to finish efficiently off the roll, clean the glass, has range defensively, can cover space and protect the rim. It's everything that this Phoenix team needed. Now, they obviously need more, but it's everything they needed out of a center. And long-term, Maluach is the guy. Make no mistakes about it. I'm considerably higher on him as an asset than Mark Williams. In fact, it's kind of funny because I had Maluach 4th on my board. The Hornets picked 4th. I was saying they should pick him regardless of Mark Williams' presence, and it ends up being these guys are not both in Charlotte. These guys are both now in Phoenix, along with Nick Richards, who was also in Charlotte. So shout out to the Phoenix Hornets. My next winner is the Memphis Grizzlies, who got one of my absolute favorite players in this draft in Cedric Coward. Now, they gave up a fair bit to get him. They gave up the 16th pick in this year's draft, which ended up being a very interesting selection that we'll talk about later. They gave up a future first, and they gave up 2 seconds.
Oh, later. Carson wants to talk about that later. That's interesting to me.
Oh, you want to talk about it shortly after this? We can if you would like, but we're not talking about it just yet. We're talking about the Memphis Grizzlies right now. I absolutely love Cedric Coward. This is a steep price to pay to move up 5 spots. Make no mistake about it. I just love the talent so much that I'm good with it. And not only do I love the talent so much, I love the fit here in Memphis. Like, this is exactly the kind of guy who you should be drafting in the lottery when you're in the position Memphis is, when you are trying to build around your lead guard in Ja Morant and your franchise big in Jaren Jackson Jr. You want to put awesome, versatile wings alongside those guys, and that's exactly what Cedric Coward is. This is a guy who is 6'6" with a 7'2" wingspan, really gifted defender, navigates screens super well. Length is very impactful. He can make recovery plays. He moves really, really well. And offensively, elite shooter from beyond the arc, nice mid-range game, really good feel offensively, can make those connective passes, and is just hyper efficient. We've said this so many times, but 70% on 2s and 40% on 3s over multiple years of college basketball is ridiculous. The only hesitations I think anyone would have about him really would be his age at almost 22 and the fact that he didn't play the highest level competition. I don't care about his age if I'm Memphis. I want a dude who can ball out. This is a dude who can ball out, who will be an immediate impact player for them, who I would start if I were them. And I think that he and Jalen Wells will make for a really nice complementary duo on the wings where they're taking those high difficulty defensive assignments and they're knocking down their shots off the catch and they're making some of those connective passes. And those are the kind of players that you need if you want to be in the playoff mix. So Memphis obviously traded away one of their best players, going into a little bit of a reset in that sense. I love the pick. I love the talent. And I think that he makes them better for next year and long term.
I completely agreed. I got two junkyard dogs on the wings. And Coward's one of my favorite players in this draft class too. I am of the belief I don't really care how old the guy is. If he can play ball, he can play ball. Give me that guy. Coward to me was one of the few sure things in this draft class at where they were picking. And I do think they gave up a little bit, but I think it's a mutually beneficial deal. I assume you were saying later because you think that is Portland a loser to you?
Portland, I don't have down as a loser necessarily. I have them down in my super weird category.
I did mark down Portland as a winner, and for that reason is because I really do like Hanson Yang. I didn't know where he was going to go in this draft. I had seen some mocks say that he was going to be a second-round pick. I had seen some say he was going to go really late in the first round, but I look at this roster. To me, this indicates that DeAndre Ayton and or Robert Williams are probably on their way out the door. Ayton is on a $35 million contract for this upcoming season, so they could either ride it out and just let him walk in free agency because they have that flexibility with Klingon and Yang now, or they could deal him, and then same thing goes for Rob Williams. He's on a $13.2 million deal for this upcoming season, and they could deal him. But to me, they get a first-round pick, which probably isn't going to be that high. It's Orlando's in 2028, so it'll probably be in the 20s. But they also get 2 second-round picks, which I like. And then they get a prospect that I like. And the reason that I don't think this is a huge L for Portland is because I didn't think they had that many needs coming into this draft anyway. I thought their rotation was pretty solid, and they didn't, again, have a ton of needs that they needed to address. So to add 3 future picks and then a prospect that, admittedly, I think Yang is very boom or bust. I think he's either going to be a staple in this league and be really solid, or he's probably not going to flourish at all and be out of the league. But I really like his offensive game. When I watch him, I see a guy with really great footwork and touch. He is surprisingly coordinated for such a large guy. Just so smooth. You see it with Euro steps, post spins, up and unders. And he's an ambidextrous finisher. Yang can do it with left and his right hand. And you see a little bit of some of that promising playmaking in passing, spotting cutters, a little bit of a handle in the open floor. My concerns with him are really him defending in space and getting up and down the floor. He's a big body, he's slow, and the level of competition. You know, it's really hard to evaluate overseas guys because they're not playing against guys with NBA size. You know, it's like when you see these, you know, let's say 16U or something, and the kid's 6'8". Well, of course he's going to dominate other 16-year-olds. He's just way bigger than everybody. You can't teach size. So those are some of my concerns, but I think he's going to be a good post defender and shot blocker. He needs to be disciplined, staying vertical. He could get into foul trouble. I think that is a concern with mine on him for the defensive end. And then, like I said, just defending reliably in space. But despite some of his athletic limitations, you know, agility and mobility, I like how he defends pick and roll and drop. I'm relatively impressed with his defensive positioning. Now, he's going to have to get more comfortable on the perimeter. That is my red flag about him. Like, Yang, I don't know if scared is the right word defending on the perimeter, but he is not comfortable whatsoever out there. He conceded a lot of open threes when he got switched on to the perimeter. He can be beat by smaller and quicker guards, and he can concede pull-up threes. But if he hits, my player comp for Yang would be a guy like Ivica Zubac, where there's not really an answer for him. He's a big – that's the absolute apex to me with a guy like Yang, to be clear. But big body, can do work and damage on the block, and can protect the rim at a high level. So for me, Portland's a winner because they didn't have a ton of needs they needed to address in this one. They get a high upside guy, in my opinion, with Yang, and they get some picks for the future. So they're not my biggest winner, but they are a winner for me.
I definitely like the value that they got back for moving back just 5 spots. Even though, yeah, that Orlando first is probably going to be in the 20s. That's a good pick to have. 2 second-rounders is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. So I very much like that aspect. I would love for Young Hansen to work out. that would be super fun. I'm not as high on him as you are. I think that he is in, as you said, a very boom or bust archetype, in that he wants to be like this post-hub, skilled offensive big who is going to really struggle on the defensive end. Like, I have very little optimism about him defensively. He's a true drop big. True drop big. And there are guys who can succeed in that mold, but generally really just as regular season defenders. And I think that you're talking about Zoo. Like, Zoo is kind of a true drop big. He can guard in space a little bit more than, say, a Young can, but that's certainly not his strength. What he does is he's an elite rim protector and an elite defensive rebounder. He's also extremely strong, which is a huge difference between him and Young, because Young has a slighter frame. He actually can be specifically bothered by physicality in a way where, like, Zoo is always going to dictate those physical terms. But I just see some very concerning stuff with Young on the defensive end, where he does not move well guarding the pick and roll whatsoever. And you talk about his positioning, I think it's bad. I think he gets stuck in no man's land way too often, where the roller can just kind of get behind him with ease. And he has like no recovery ability, man. Like, he can get stuck in mud. He does not change direction well, not quick recovering whatsoever. So that's the concern. And then offensively, I mean, yeah, you have to be excited about the talent, but there's also some questions there. Like, first of all, this is a post hub. Like, this is a guy who has been by far most effective as a post scorer, where at 7'1" with a 7'3" wingspan, yeah, he's got really nice post footwork, and he is coordinated, and he's got a spin move, and he's got something of a bag down there. I always question, though, with guys whose bread and butter offensively is the post game, how good are they really? Like, will it justify
Can I ask you something?
a high usage in the post in the NBA?
I was going to ask, is it kind of like the thing we always talk about with small guards, where it's like the push-pull thing with them, where it's like, is it worth them having them on the floor and having the ball in their hands if they're going to be this ineffective defensively?
Yeah, I think that anybody who you're really worried about defensively, you are constantly negotiating. That offensive value, does it outweigh it? And absolutely, with small guards, it's them getting exploited for their lack of physical tools and for a slow-footed big. I mean, we've just seen that story so many times where these guys get targeted relentlessly in the playoffs especially, and they're the most important defensive player on the floor. Still, like, you're still supposed to be the anchor of the defense. He can protect the rim. That's just all I think he can do. But when it comes to the offensive thing, like, think about Zach Edey, who was probably the greatest college post-up player that we have seen
Since
this
Ralph
century.
Sampson? Yeah, I was going to say.
Like, that dude was posting up 18 times per game his last year at Purdue. He individually was posting up more than basically every NBA team was. Then he gets to the league, plays a fair bit as a rookie, averages 1.8 post-ups per game. A 90% drop-off in post-ups. Like, generally, the post game is used selectively. It's used for mismatch attacking. It's used for punishing small ball looks. Unless you are Jokic, Embiid, an offense isn't going to run through you out of the post. And even a guy like Şengün, who I think that's kind of like the best case scenario for a Young, right? You see it with the skilled post arsenal and the passing feel. Even he, I don't really like as an offensive hub. Like, I think, he's got to be more efficient. He's got some ball stopping tendencies there. I love the post game. It's not the foundation of many offenses in today's NBA. And I do think that Young has some play finishing potential. I think that he has some potential off the short roll where he's got really good feel, and I think he's a good screener. I do like his passing a lot. I think that's a really fun aspect of his game. I also think there were times where he was probably a little too score first, and I think you see that with the negative assist to turnover ratio, even though he is a very gifted passer. And some of that is probably just trying to do too much. Some of that is him trying to handle a little too much. I also think, though, physicality, pressure are a couple of concerns for me. And the post game looks really pretty, but like you said, man, it's basically like watching a dude on the Nerf hoop. Like, it's watching a grown man on the Nerf hoop. The Chinese Basketball Association competition is not good. He is consistently by far the biggest dude, best athlete on the floor. So I just have some questions. I do think like the touch is decent. 47% on hook shots, 67% from the line. I just think he has to be really good offensively for this to work out. And also, I do wonder about where he fits in Portland. Like, my presumption is actually not that they're going to trade Ayton or Time Lord. I think both those guys are pretty difficult to trade, and they're on expiring deals. I think they're just going to say, okay, we'll let Ayton walk after this year. We'll let Time Lord walk after this year. Hansen just really won't play this year. And then we'll move forward with a Klingon and Young center rotation. And I have no problem with him not playing this year. Like, I think that is going to be a big transition for him. This is a guy who's going to be leaping so far in terms of the level of competition that he's facing. There are parts of the talent that I really do like. There are also some big red flags and concerns, and it ends up just being a bit high for me, all things considered. 16 is higher than I would have liked to go. I think clearly they're in love with the talent, but we'll see. I wasn't expecting them to take a center, I'll tell you that, with how crowded that room is for the moment, and that very well could change after this year, but we've got a lot of dudes at center right now.
They do. I mean, he seems like a prime candidate to go play for the Remix, their G League team year one, and I think that's the right idea. Another winner that I have is OKC, and I know some people probably won't look at that pick and say that OKC is a big winner. Maybe they thought they should have addressed a different archetype or a different need positionally. I'm just so confident in Thomas Sorber's floor that I really love this move for Oklahoma City. The big selling thing with Sorber is just his defensive game, and so when I think about a team that their identity is defense, I couldn't think of many better players in this draft class that they could have gone out and gotten. He is, I call him Big Nasty. I mean, he does the dirty work, and that is my favorite thing about Sorber. It's just rare that you see a guy who was a freshman or a guy who's going to enter in his rookie league, and he's okay with banging and playing physically the way that you need to in the NBA. And I know Sorber will. Like, he is strong. He's 6'9" with a 7'6" wingspan, 263 pounds. He is a big body. He's going to be the 8th heaviest player in the NBA in his rookie season. And good rim protector. I think he's got good instincts in positioning. He plays super physically. He's good at staying vertical and not fouling. And I really like his defensive playmaking. Active hands, good shot blocker as well. And he's got some offensive game. That's not really a selling point. It's rebounding. It's defense. It's, again, doing the dirty work, screen setting, all that stuff. But I do think there's some upside there. He rolls hard. He's good at driving through guys. Again, most of the selling points to me with Sorber are the physicality, the big, strong stuff that he can do. And that stuff's hard to stop. Like, that's just something that a lot of guys can't do, and he's got the size and physicality where I think he's going to be able to do it. So I don't know how much he's going to play in his rookie year with Hartenstein, with Holmgren. You know, this is a team that's ready to win now, and so I don't know if he's really going to factor into the equation this year. I think this is more of a long-term pick for whenever they move off of an Isaiah Hartenstein, and he can step up and play a role, but I think he's got a really high floor, really good defensive player, really good rebounder, and then offensively, I think he's a good post scorer. I like his footwork. He's got pump fakes, counters. He's got good touch, and that's not the big selling point on him, but I think he's got a solid offensive game. But he's a throwback kind of player. Like, he is a old school, like 2000s kind of big man in a way. But I like Sorber a lot. I think he's got a really high floor, and I just think the Thunder got a really good value add at 15. As we mentioned, personally, and I know you feel the same way, I would have rather them gone out and gotten Nick Clifford, which ironically they trade away the rights to that pick to the Sacramento Kings with the 24th pick. They could have had both of the guys, which kind of blows my mind because I would have really liked them getting Sorber and Clifford. They'd be big, big winners to me from this draft if they had done that. But I really like Sorber's game, and I really like how he factors into the long-term equation for OKC.
This pick makes a lot of sense. I like it. As amazing as OKC is, they do have needs, and if you were to identify those, it would be more ball handling, and I think they look internally and say, okay, Nikola Topic, now's your time to step up in that role. An elite shooter on the wings, and I think it's more likely that they pursue that player via trade, if it's Cam Johnson, than it is that they were just going to draft a guy and expect him to step into that role. And then it's another rotational big for the post-Hartenstein era, because the reality is OKC has a ton of picks for a reason, they are going to have to continue to draft and develop quality role players on their rookie deals because they're going to be paying a shit ton of money to the big three for the foreseeable future. This window they're in right now of being able to pay multiple role players $20+ million a year, that window is going to close pretty soon. And Hartenstein is part of that. Like, yeah, they have him under control for this next year, obviously, as Chet and J-Dub are still on their rookie deals. And then after that, it's a team option. I think there's a real chance that he is gone. And so that's when you ask a Sorber to step in as a really good defensive talent, anchoring your bench unit as a guy who offensively, yeah, it's pretty simple, but good rim efficiency, gets to the line, nice body control and finishing. And then I think he's a good connective passer, and I think he's got some feel and can run handoffs and make plays off the short roll. And that's something that OKC kind of asks of all their bigs. They ask that of Jay Will. They ask that of Hartenstein. And so I think Sorber fits nicely for a need. I think that it's a good value pick, and I liked it at 15. You mentioned that they could have had Nick Clifford, who we mocked them at 15. He ends up falling all the way to 24, which was also their pick, which they had to trade because they did not have the roster spot to sign another player, which is absurd. Now, there are ways to navigate that. They could have traded. They could have cut a Dylan Jones. But at the end of the day, they wanted to add more draft capital because they were out of spots on their roster. It bummed me out. I really wanted to see Nick Clifford go to OKC. I thought he would have been a perfect ball handler for them who can also do some of the wing stuff. But he ends up going to Sacramento. And so they're a winner of this draft to me just because I think it's one of the best value picks that there was. This is a guy who, to me, was a lottery talent, especially going to a win now situation, which Sacramento kind of is. I mean, they want to win now. Are they going to win a ton now? No, but they want to be in the playoffs. This is a guy who at 23 years old can immediately come in and be a really quality bench ball handler for them, who's an extremely efficient pick and roll and isolation creator, who has a really nice game getting into the lane, excellent footwork as a driver and finisher, but also really good mid-range shooter with a lot of counters, really good three-point shooter, both pulling up and off the catch, and a really gifted passer with great size at 6'6", an insane rebounding guard, almost 10 per game he grabbed this year with solid defensive tools and measurables. I just love the talent. Like, he does so much well that I don't care about the ceiling. I don't care about the age. You get that guy at 24 years old, and I know he's going to be a positive contributor for me in a number of ways. I love, love, love that pick. He's one of my guys, and to get him at 24, I just think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I wish he had gone to a better situation where he could, like, you know, potentially.
Says the Kings fan.
Look, bro, we're not making the playoffs, so it's like, cool, win now situation. I like Nick Clifford a lot. It's a good ad for the Kings, and honestly, just considering their, like, guard rotation now, Nick Clifford's going to be the actual, like, I won't say actual point guard, but it's like they were running Malik Monk a lot at the point guard spot, and Malik's gotten a lot better as a playmaker, but I feel like Nick actually fits more into that actual point guard kind of role. And again, he's so versatile. I mentioned, I'm going to say it a million times, I don't care about how old the players are. If you're 24, if you're 25 coming into this draft, 20, whatever, if you can play ball, I want you on my team. Now, is that going to affect maybe where you go? Yeah, certainly it could factor in, but I want a guy that I'm sure in, and I know Nick Clifford's going to be a good NBA player. So I do like that pick. That was another team I had written down, and those are all of my real big winners for this draft. Do you have any more you'd like to shout out?
I do have a couple more. Nick Clifford was one of my favorite value picks of the draft. So was Yakachonis, falling all the way to 20 to the Miami Heat, and I can see why he fell, because there is a downside here, but I also think there's a really significant upside. He's one of the most talented offensive players in the draft, and there's a couple swing factors there. Can he cut down on the turnovers, which were really high this past year? Can he show an improved ability to separate one-on-one? Can he show you that he can really get it done against high-level NBA athletes? Those would be the questions, but all the selling points would be, this is a guy with a lethal step-back game, with really good size, creates a ton of space for his perimeter shot, and the shot selection can be tough. I think that dragged the numbers down some. He was also shooting much better before an injury, but this is a guy who I think can be an excellent shooter. 85% from the line, 3-point percentage down at 31, but it was 41% before that injury. So I think that he can be a really, really gifted shooter who can consistently create his own shot from the perimeter. And even though he wasn't an efficient 3-point shooter, still a very efficient scorer. I mean, gave you 15, 6, and 5 on 59% true shooting at Illinois.
Big
boy competition. Because he gets to the line at an insane rate. He's a really crafty, effective, below-the-rim finisher and one of the most creative passers and best passers in this class with great size. So, yes, there are questions. Defensively, he's going to be targeted. I just think when you're getting one of the best offensive talents in the class at number 20, that's where we can talk about this balance between offensive upside but offensive questions versus knowing that as a guard he's going to be attacked defensively. You're not investing a top 10 pick. You're not saying, okay, we're banking our franchise on this guy. You got him in the late first round, and I just think he's a phenomenal talent to get there. I think he's going to be awesome running that bench unit. Like, I'm not even thinking about, but do him and Tyler Hero work together long term because they'll be so hunted defensively? I don't care. You got the best talent on the board. I mean, Neek was still out there, and I love him too, but Yakuchonis, I would prefer even to Neek Clifford, and you got that guy, so you can figure out these questions of fit later on. Right now, you landed a potential stud, and I love that for the Heat.
Yeah, and I think he fits like long-term more. I don't really think Miami should be making a ton of win-now moves because I don't think this team is going to be contending for a title. Like, I don't know what's next for this team because they are in a weird spot, giving up Jimmy, bringing in Wiggins, Davion Mitchell, right? Like, this team wants to be competitive, but I really like that Yakuchonis could be like somebody that carries this team into their next. If everything goes right, obviously, I'll add that caveat, but if everything goes right, he could be a guy that carries the torch for this Miami Heat team into their next era of hopefully competitive basketball, and I think he is going to be good off the bench. Miami normally does a really good job in the draft, man. I really like them getting Khalil Ware, Jaime Jaquez, Jovic. Like, Miami's normally really solid.
Even Hero and Bam, like those guys were the 13th and 14th picks. They've done a lot of good work in the draft, and I think that this is another instance of that. I do have one more winner also in the Southeast Division. Really like the Magic getting Jace Richardson at 25. This is a team that desperately needs offensively skilled guards. And the Desmond Bane move was a very, very nice one, but doesn't change the fact that this roster is still lacking in ball handling and three-point shooting. And Jace Richardson is one of the more skilled offensive guards in this class. Shot 46% on catch-and-shoot threes, really good off movement, and just a nice off-ball player who knows how to read off-ball screens, who's got good feel as a cutter, and he's an efficient finisher at the rim, shot almost 70% there. And he's not going to be a primary ball handler for you. He's not an advanced playmaker, but he's got good passing feel. So he's not going to be like a creator for you. He's going to be a really nice off-ball piece who can do some of that secondary, tertiary ball handling creation for you. Defensively, he's got good length, 6'6" wingspan, but he is small. But again, like they picked him at 25, and he's going to be a pretty high floor, reliable offensive contributor. And just that shooting, man. My God, they need that shooting.
Think about the bar. The bar is better than Cole Anthony. I think he can clear that.
The bar is in hell for what we're expecting of Magic guards offensively. So I did really like that for them. Let's talk about the losers, Logan. Who stands out to you here?
I mean, I feel like this team's probably been the punching bag all the post-NBA draft coverage. There's two of them. I don't know what the hell the Brooklyn Nets did in this draft.
They picked 5 times.
They certainly did, Carson. They certainly did. Yeah. I didn't like any of their picks. I think the pick that I liked most was Ben Seraph at 26. But their first 2 picks really puzzled me, man. Like, confounded, befuddled, gobsmacked, whatever term you want to throw in here, dude. Igor Demin, one of my least favorite first-round prospects. I would have been okay taking him in the 20s. That was about where I thought he should go. 19, Nolan Traore, I did not think was a first-round pick. That guy screams boom, but very more likely bust to me. I would have taken him in the second round. Drake Powell, I think, is a project wing. Seraph, I did like. Again, kind of in that boomer bust. And then, like, Danny Wolf, to me, what's really confounding, Carson, is just the redundancy of the skill sets of the players they drafted to me.
Yeah.
They got 3 playmaking pass-first guards that struggled to score. And so, like, if they had taken Demon and then they had gotten a 3-and-D wing and a big man, I'd be like, okay, you know, all right, I could see it. You created a starting 5 with your picks. But they said, we're actually going to get 3 guys that all play really similar to one another, and then we're going to get a big man that also can't defend and can't really score, and his best trait is his playmaking and ball handling. I don't know, man. You talked about this before we started the show with Jason on the live stream, that the Nets were probably the most intriguing team to keep an eye on just in terms of what they could do.
Yeah.
And what they did is just puzzling. The guy that I'm most hyped about is Seraph, where I see, like, I like his craftiness. I think he's got a really good handle. I think he's a good passer and playmaker. But again, none of these guys can score at a high level. And the thing that Carson and I always harp on with primary ball handlers is you got to be able to serve buckets. I'll put it like this. I could see every one of these guys flaming out and being out of the league within 3 to 4 years. Mm-hmm. I didn't like any of these guys as prospects, and I thought 8 and 19 were extreme overreaches. So
yeah,
I give the Brooklyn Nets an F, a complete F. I thought this was a horrendous draft. I wish I could walk you through, like, the rationale or what they're thinking. I don't know what they're thinking.
It's so funny. I mean, it's one of the weirdest draft classes I think we've ever seen a team put together. Let's start from the top. I thought that Igor at 8 was probably the worst pick of the first round. Like you said, I would have taken him closer to 20. Like, the Nets bet on the worst archetype in basketball to bet on 3 different times. 3 different times they said, ooh, we like that bigger guard who's a gifted passer. He can't score. We don't care. Those guys don't succeed in the league, period, point blank. And Igor is the biggest. He's the best passer. And I think he's the best passer in this class. Still, he has so many major red flags as a scorer. Doesn't get to the rim much. Doesn't get to the line much. Doesn't get super low on his drive. Doesn't get past you. Doesn't really create advantages in a one-on-one context. We've seen him struggle with ball pressure. We've seen him struggle with physicality, struggle to play through contact. And he's been a poor shooter up to this point. Under 70% from the line. 25% on jumpers off the dribble. Really struggled in conference play when the competition ratcheted up a bit. Under 10 points per game, 3.2 turnovers, 47% true shooting, and he's going to be targeted defensively consistently in the league. I'm not betting on a guy like that in the top 10. I don't care how fun the passing highlights are. Those players do not succeed in the league when entrusted with primary ball handling responsibilities. To run your bench unit, sure, go at it, but so much has to get so much better for him to work out. Really, that jump shot has to be so much better, but he has to threaten you as a scorer in a far more significant way. I was out on Igor. Like, he was always my least favorite guy who was considered a lottery talent. For him to go all the way up at 8, I think it's a disaster. Then you go to Traoré. Okay, I'll go with the American pronunciation going forward, Logan, but I am learning French. I want you to know that. Traoré, who was a very highly touted prospect a year ago, but, like, in so many ways is in the same archetype. He doesn't have the 6'8" aspect of it. He's just a regular size point guard, but he's also going to get targeted defensively. I think the turnover numbers for him are a little bit higher than you would like, and fundamentally just like, how is this guy really going to score? Yes, he's got good vision. He's a true point guard. True point guards don't start in today's NBA. He averaged 0.8 points per jumper. That's a bad number. 70% free throw shooter. That's not good, and, like, that's going to have to be an important part of his bread and butter. He's got a nice little floater game. Looks nice. He relies on it a lot. He shot 33% on runners, so there's nothing in his scoring arsenal that I'm confident in, and he's another pass-first point guard. And then Seraph, like, in terms of a value pick out of the pass-first international point guards who they took, he is my favorite. But still, same questions. Can he score? Can he create separation? 25% three-point shooter, 37% on two-point jumpers. Those are not encouraging numbers.
He does. He's got a sexual handle, though, man. I really do like his handle.
And he does have the size, and he's a very creative passer. And I do like his change in pace, his deceleration. I think he can get into the paint a decent amount for you. It's just absurd to me that he would be the third guy in that archetype. But yeah, I mean, out of the three, considering value, he would be my favorite. I like him more than Traore, I would say, just as a talent. But man, and the fact that they took Igor over Yakuchonis to me, if they were going to draft in that archetype to begin with, I thought was a mistake. The other two I'm more okay with, like Powell. Thank God they didn't draft another international pass first point guard. I don't know. At least they got like a two-way wing who has the length, who has the measurables, who has the shooting. I'm fine with that. And then Danny Wolf, like, yes, he is also in a wonky archetype, but they took him 28th. And so that's where, okay, I can talk myself into the passing, the rebounding. Can the shot come along to make him a more effective scorer? I was okay with that. Still no question, I think they are the biggest losers of draft night. I mean, Igor alone was a disaster. And then I just like couldn't believe my eyes as I looked up, and they continue to have the most obvious type that I've ever seen in a single draft. It's so weird. Like, their entire philosophy has to be, okay, one of these three guys is going to work out, because they're not going to work together.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They're betting on one dude out of three when they had 5 first-round picks. They invested 3 of them in this one mold that, again, is my least favorite to bet on in the entire NBA. I'm blown away. I'm blown away by what the Nets did. I don't like it at all. They are now the Brooklyn Netanyahus as well, because they took 2 Israeli guys in the same draft. Just shockingly weird, bad drafting, in my opinion. So I agree. They're the big loser. 5 picks, man. I was excited. I was like, okay, Nets, let's jumpstart a rebuild here. You guys really have nothing. You have Cam Johnson. You have Nick Claxton. Maybe you trade them. You don't believe in Cam Thomas. 5 picks? Get some shots up. And they put some shots up, man. They stood and drafted. I do not like what they did with those shots, though.
The funniest stat about their draft to me is they got 3 of the top 6 players in this draft in assist rate. And Seraph is 6th, Traore's number 1, and Demon is number 5. So funny to me. They might not be done, though. They picked number 36 tonight. What if they went out and got Ryan Nembhard or Cam Jones and just got another one? You know that.
Why not?
But
they're American. I don't know if they'll draft American.
It's hilarious to me, man. It's also funny, as we talked about this on the live stream, but like how excited they were that they got Demon. It's like, oh, we didn't know if he was going to be here. Like,
Igor is not going to work out. He's not.
I don't think so either, but it's just like the lack of high floor guys or two-way players. Like,
yeah,
that's the thing to me, is that like maybe Powell will work out in that mold, but everybody else, Demon, Traore, Seraph, and Wolf, all I think are major liabilities defensively, and that's where I really scratch my head. Like, all those guys are going to be attacked. None of those guys are reliable score. It's hilarious, man. I think the last time I've been this confused by an individual draft class is when the Sacramento Kings decided to draft 2 big men when they had DeMarcus Cousins on the books and took, I think, Marquise Chris and Georgios Papagiannis.
No, Chris went to the Suns.
Yeah, who was the other? They took Papagiannis that year.
Yeah, you're thinking of 2016 when they took both Papagiannis and Scalabrine.
Yeah. Like, that's the last time I've been this confused by an individual draft, man.
It's always good when you're drawing comparisons to the Kings in the heart of the Vlade Divac GM era. Crazy stuff from the Nets. But you said there's another big loser who stands out to you, which is interesting because I don't think anybody stands out to me like the Nets do. Who is that?
Oh, it's definitely the Pelicans. I mean, I put the Pelicans right up there with the Brooklyn Nets for the loser of this draft. And let me be clear about something immediately. This has nothing to do with Derek Queen or the talent and the ability of Derek Queen. I loved him as a prospect. I think he plays a really fun brand of basketball. I don't know if it's going to translate to winning because of some of the concerns that we have about him. Defensively, as a 5-man, he's a bit of a tweener before that 4 and 5 spot, but he is an uber-talented offensive player with a ton of skill, and it's rare that you find that kind of skill in this kind of body. So I would have really liked for Queen to have gone to a team with a defensive anchor that I believe in, where he could play that 4 spot and wouldn't have to play the 5. So this has nothing to do with Queen. It has all to do with the current state of the Pelicans roster, basically, and their franchise. I think this is a gross misunderstanding of where you are at as an NBA franchise and what you can feasibly accomplish this next year. So we already talked about these details earlier when I praised the Hawks for making this move, but the Pelicans moved up to get the 13th pick, and they gave up the number 23 pick and a first-round pick next year unprotected, which is going to be the best of Milwaukee or New Orleans. It's going to be very high up. It's going to be in the lottery, and I think has a very high chance of being a top 5 pick. And Ed, that's what I'm just confused about, Carson, with where the Pelicans are at roster-wise. Think about their starting 5 next year if you just go with the best players on this roster. Either Poole or DeJounte Murray at the 1 or 2. I don't think you can start both of them, but I wouldn't put it past the Pelicans to do it.
They will.
So we'll go Poole at the 1, DeJounte at the 2. Horrible idea. Do you start Herb and Trey both?
Did the Pelicans exist anymore, man?
I don't know what's going on, man. Like, because you're either going to start Herb and Trey, you're going to start Zion, and then you go with Queen or Missy at the... I don't know, man. It's so clunky and stupid, and it's not going to work. And they don't have any winning basketball players. Like, Jordan Poole is not a two-way guy. DeJounte Murray is not a two-way guy. Zion Williamson is not a two-way guy. Trey Murphy is the only one on the roster, and he's likely to get traded.
Herb's a winner.
Herb and Trey are winners. I'm just talking about, like, the guys getting paid the most money on this roster. Mm-hmm. It's non-existent. And the bigger thing, like you mentioned earlier, Carson, these moves are indicative of a team that thinks they are going to be competitive and in the heart of a playoff race. You're just not. You're nowhere close, New Orleans. Even if Zion Williamson played, God bless him, let's say 60 games, I don't think you're making the playoffs. And like you mentioned, the over-under is probably at about 28 and a half. I might take the under. It's like, I just don't like this roster at all. I don't think this ownership group understands where they're at as a franchise. My best recommendation to New Orleans would be to trade everybody on the books. Zion, DeJounte, when you can trade Poole after acquiring, get him off the books, if anybody would want. And that's the thing. These are not enviable assets. These are not players that a lot of teams would be willing to trade for because DeJounte and Poole aren't winning players, because Zion can't stay healthy. That's the other thing that makes this really hard, is these aren't really pivotable assets. They're not really pieces that you can just flip for something else.
No.
I do like the Jeremiah Fears pick as a long-term upside grab. That's the only saving grace for me. I like Fears and Queen. I do like the players, but I just don't get how they factor in to what you're trying to do right now. So the Pelicans are losers, and they are almost as confusing as the Brooklyn Nets.
They're swinging for the fences here. Now, I think that they got good talents in a vacuum at 7 and 13, but I do not whatsoever like them giving up their unprotected first next year. I think that that is a crazy, crazy risk. And in terms of like what this says about the state of their roster and where they're headed, if anything, this to me says they're going to try to blow things up, because I don't see a world in which Derek Queen and Zion Williamson play together.
So why do you think they traded for Jordan Poole? That's the one that really makes me scratch my head. I guess.
I mean, like, I think that they view him and CJ in a similar archetype, similar caliber players. Like I said, I don't like either of their contracts, so I would just be trying to get off that money faster. But my guess is they probably would just rather have the guy who maybe could be a long-term piece for them. That being said, I think it's going to be exceedingly difficult to trade DeJounte Murray. I think it is going to be exceedingly difficult to trade Zion Williamson. But, like, what the hell else is happening here, man? I mean, they drafted 2 of the biggest boom or bust prospects. Like, they swung for the fences. And I like Fears. I had him 8 on my big board. There are a lot of people who are out on Fears, and there are some questions. As we say with many of these guys, small guard, going to struggle defensively. Offensively, high turnover player. Was not proven as a jump shooter, 28% from deep. although he was good from the mid-range and excellent free throw shooter, 85%. So there are positive indicators there, but the three-point shot was not effective, not efficient. And then you also have questions about his ability to finish at the rim, where he only shot 53%. These are things he all has to clean up because he has to be so good offensively to justify being a small guard who's going to get attacked defensively. I am an optimist because I do think there are positive indicators with his mid-range game, with his free throw shooting. He also just lives in the paint and gets to the line at a crazy rate and is just such a dynamic ball handler and so shifty and has such good footwork and such good speed that he's able to put so much rim pressure on you. That's very valuable for his scoring and his playmaking, where he's really good. So he's one of the few guys in this class who you see an actual star ceiling for. Do you also see a floor where he's out of the league, unplayable? Yeah, I do. But I see a ceiling where this is a guy who could be an offensive engine, and there's not many of those guys in that class. And for New Orleans, because I like so little about their current state and their future, I'm good with them taking a big swing at 7. Queen, I also think, he's in a funky archetype where I don't think he's a center. I don't think that he can anchor a defense as a 5. He's just so limited as a rim protector. He's a below the rim player. He's a power forward. But offensively, he does have a lot of intrigue as a driver where he can be very effective. He's got this unique combination of size and agility and power and coordination and gets to the rim a ton, gets to the line a ton. Now, you have questions about his jump shot, but he's also got nice passing feel. The jumper is definitely the swing trait for him offensively. If everything comes together, both these guys can be awesome basketball players. Also, there's an outcome in which both of them really, really struggle to find a role in the NBA. And Derek Queen and Zion cannot be your front court. You just can't have that group together.
I mean, that might be the most food front court of all time, bro.
Defensively, not a chance. And then offensively, just incompatible. You need to put shooting around both these guys.
I was going to say, I'm going to park both my big men in the paint on both of them, and they're not moving.
Derek Queen is somebody who is going to want to operate as kind of a face-up hub, which, is a weird mold, but can he be good enough? And he wants to get downhill a ton. Zion obviously lives getting downhill. They can't coexist. And so that's where I feel like they have to be thinking, we're done with Zion, we're moving off of him. But then I go, who's taking on Zion at $40 million a year? I think Zion, when healthy, is a top 15 player. I also think Zion plays 25 to 30 games a year most of the time. This is a guy who was drafted in 2019 and has played 214 games over 6 seasons. He's just not going to be an appealing asset on the trade market. So I don't put the Pelicans on the level of the Nets as a loser just because I like the talents they got considerably more. But I thought the trade was reckless, and their entire vision as a franchise to me is confounding, and I'm just very confused. I'm very confused by everything going on in New Orleans.
Clunky and funky is how I would that's how I'd put what the Pelicans are doing. I didn't think anything else was that egregious, Carson, in terms of losers. I thought there were a few things that puzzled me. I wouldn't call this team a winner, but looking back on the roster that they're trying to build, I kind of like what they've got going. I like what the Hornets did a little bit. Now, passing on Maluach I thought was a little bit of a misstep with the 4th pick, but the fact that they got Knuppel and McNeely, who were 2 of the best shooters in the class, I just think you put those guys next to LaMelo and Brandon Miller, you figured your spacing out at least. I still think that team has a long ways to go in terms of becoming a competitive, winning basketball team. They got to figure out how to defend at a high level. That's just number one for the Hornets, and I don't really see that happening, but I like them adding shooting. Those are 2 guys that are going to work alongside a guy like LaMelo Ball. And so, I did like the Beringer. How do you say his name, bro? I'm struggling.
Beringer.
I'm going to have to get on my French grind like Carson.
Just Beringer.
I did like Minnesota getting him long-term. I like his upside. Now, he's only been playing basketball for 4 years. Again, I wouldn't call Minnesota a big winner because I didn't think it was a home run pick or anything like that, but I do like his upside. He's a good rebounder, and again, he's only been playing basketball for 4 years. I think he's got really good instincts, and he defends like a wild man. The guy has got really good mobility and fluidity and athleticism for a guy his size. But the reason that I think he's going to work is he has a willingness to play a role. He's not trying to do too much out there where he's going to set screens, he's going to do dribble handoffs, he's going to defend, he's going to do his job. And so, again, he could flame out in the league. Who knows? But I do like his long-term prospects and his upside. And, again, I think he plays a really simple role, but I think he can do that at a really high level, playing defense and rebounding. So I liked Minnesota making that move.
Yeah, I like that pick too. I think that obviously they have drafted their Rudy successor. I think that he is a guy who is in a translatable archetype. I think that he's a really good defensive talent who's only been playing basketball for a few years, but you see, great length, good build, solid mobility, quality rim protector, got to polish some stuff, a little bit foul prone right now. Offensively, there's not much there.
I really like how he blitzes guards out of pick and rolls and stuff like that, though, man. It's really rare that you see a willingness to do that. So, a willingness to do that as a big man, but then in execution, it's actually solid. And his ability to blitz those guys and then recover back to the center, I was really impressed with his defensive tape.
Yeah, I think that he's a very impressive defender, and you mentioned that ability to play aggressive coverages, move out in space, even switch a little bit. I think that there's a high defensive floor with him. I don't think he'll ever be much of an offensive player. I would have liked if they had taken Jonas to try to figure out some of their just guard creation, ball handling stuff that they need to figure out at the point guard spot.
I also
I'm a little disappointed they didn't do that, but
I thought Neek could have been a good pick for them too.
I see where they're going here, and I think that it's a fine pick. The Hornets, Khan at number 4 was a little bit high for me just because I don't think the ceiling quite justifies it. And defensively, I worry about him and LaMelo being the backcourt of your future. I worry about that a lot. But he's a very high field, very skilled offensive player. He's going to be a hell of a shooter. He's going to make an impact there. And then McNeely, all the way at 29, he's got some stuff to figure out. He's going to struggle to defend. That is where I worry about the future for Charlotte and what they did in this draft. But even though the shooting numbers weren't great, and he really, really struggled shooting off the dribble, 6th percentile on jumpers off the dribble, unguarded jumpers, you see the catch and shoot efficiency. The mechanics are beautiful, and I do think he's going to be a very good shooter. And then he's got a little something out of pick and roll. Not a good finisher at the rim, though. I would say probably underwhelmed relative to expectations he had going into UConn, but still a solid talent here. Still should be able to provide some value with his shooting. So I would say I was okay with that draft. Didn't love it. Let me ask you about a couple of just really interesting drafts, in my opinion. What did you think of what Utah did?
I liked their aggression to get Ace Bailey. I'm nervous about Bailey just in terms of his willingness to play like a winning role. But again, I think if there's going to be a team that's going to get him to get his head screwed on straight and figure it out, I think Utah is as good of a bet as any, just with Will Hardy and Danny Ainge and the structure that they have there. So I think he was the most talented player on the board with where they were picking at 5. So there's a lot of upside there, but I also think it's boom or bust. You know me. I really loved them getting Walter Clayton. I loved that pick. Utah is so weird, man.
So weird, dude.
They've got so many young players. At some point with this, you're just going to have to cut some guys loose and say, all right, you're not, if it's Markkanen, if it's Hendricks, if it's Keontae, I don't know who they're going to prioritize. If it's Cody Williams, there just comes a point where you got to say, you're not going to work here. We got to move on from you because we got too many young guys in the building. But specifically what they did in this draft, I like the talents that they got in Bailey. And you know me, I might be the biggest Walter Clayton guy on the planet. So I like them getting him.
They are in a really weird spot. And that backcourt is crowded with a whole lot of mid, man. I don't know. Just the battle for touches and minutes with Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, Keontae George, Isaiah Collier, and now Walter Clayton getting in there. I like Clayton's talent at 18. I think that he's a high-floor offensive player. I'm just where is he going to fit? And they keep betting on kind of these smaller guards who you're going to have some questions about, at least him and Keontae in that respect.
I'm dumping Sexton, Clarkson, and Keontae.
There's no reason not to trade Sexton because you could actually get a return for him. Clarkson, yeah, you're going to be dumping as an expiring. I don't think that there's any team that particularly wants to take him on. They've got to clear up some space there, in my opinion, and then maybe I'd feel a little bit better about the Clayton pick. And then Ace Bailey, we've talked about him a lot. He's one of the most interesting prospects in this class. I'm not encouraged on his willingness to buy into the role that I think he needs to succeed, which is I'm not going to try to do much with the ball in my hands because of my limitations as a ball handler, my issues playing through physicality, playing through contact, with people pressuring the ball, all of these issues he has where he's stiff, he's upright, he doesn't get by you, and he can just settle for a bunch of tough shots, and he also doesn't pass the ball. He's got to be off-ball weapon, shooting the shit out of it, cutting to the basket, and then lock the hell in defensively. If he does that, he could be a top 3 player in this class. The thing is just turning down pre-draft workouts, saying basically I'm going to be a star, that's who I want to be, you don't work on that shot, I work on that shot, etc., etc., etc. Just makes me less and less optimistic about him. And so I don't hate the pick because of the talent. I would have preferred Trey Johnson. I'm just more confident in him. His offensive skill set translating. There's a mold that he can follow there as that elite off-ball shooter who can parlay that into a pick and roll game, who can parlay that into some basic playmaking stuff where he can make the reads. Like, the aesthetics of it look different for sure. But when I think about like what a Trey Johnson path to stardom kind of looks like, it's like, all right, can you do the Desmond Bane stuff offensively? And again, it looks different builds, but just that ability to be a lethal 3-point shooter and be so effective there and draw so much attention that you can grow into a solid playmaker if you've got the right feel and you make the right reads. And I can see that path. I think it's more likely that happens than Ace Bailey does figure all this stuff out. And particularly in a Will Hardy system where he's so great at using off-ball shooters and setting them up with off-ball screens. I would have liked to see that, but they didn't go that way. Oh, well.
Yeah, there's a significant lack of self-awareness with Ace Bailey that he just doesn't have that's really, really concerning. Even in post-draft interviews when people were grilling him and they were, they're asking him questions. I thought that was pretty illuminating when they're asking him and he goes, I'm about basketball. And then he goes, so why didn't you go to your pre-draft workouts?
Dude, I don't think he's happy to be in Utah either. I don't know. I just don't like the attitude. I think
Same.
The way to fail as a supremely talented basketball player is to not understand your strengths and weaknesses and how you need to adjust and to lack that self-awareness. And there's just a lot of alarm bells going off.
And to be overly confident that,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Because I feel like the more realistic approach is I've been the best player, I've been the most talented all the way through high school, through college. That has carried me through.
Oh, when you get best player in college.
Well, I'm just saying. Yeah, I mean he is, but
I'm just saying shout out Dylan Harper. No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just
you know me, Logan. I'm a dick. Sorry, I'm the biggest asshole
semantics.
You'll ever be. Sorry.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's why I'm useless, and that's why I'm a terrible podcast host and a piece of shit.
Let me collect my thoughts, bro.
Okay, just take a moment to be with yourself, but just know that I'm really sorry about what happened.
Fuck, what was I gonna say?
I'm so sorry this happened.
Just stop, bro. I can't think.
This is all going in the pod. Logan, I'm so sorry. I'm going to go and study with some Shaolin monks, and I'm going to change myself for the better. Right now, I'm a really bad guy. I'm selfish, and I don't pay attention, and the spotlight always has to be me, and I regret so much the way that I have treated you. I'm trying to tell you how I feel, Logan. I'm trying to, for once in my life, just be vulnerable and honest with you and share something real.
Featuring Paul Rudd and somebody else.
Good film. Jason Segel plays his eccentric buddy in that movie. Good film.
Anyways, Bailey's always been one of the most uber talented guys, and it's like that can carry you through a lot, but it's really concerning to me. This is when the hard work should really begin and the refinement and the commitment, and when that's not your mentality, it's like Ace to me is a guy that's just like taking it for granted that everything's going to come. And that to me means that it's like people behind the scenes, and I don't know if it's agent, if it's his family, are kind of filling his head up with, yeah, you're the shit, you're this. It's like Angel Reese's people to me. And this isn't a one-to-one comp because Angel Reese isn't talented at all. But it's like, she's just big, man. I'll tell it like it is. But it's like, Angel Reese could be a great basketball player if she had people in her camp that would tell her, hey, girl, go on the free throw line and build your touch out and become a decent offensive player. It's like Ace doesn't need yes men in his camp. Ace needs people that are going to tell him, hey, dude, you're one of the most talented kids in this draft, but this is where you need to make a commitment to being a winning player and playing a role and doing your job and making a winning impact. And that is where I'm nervous about him. If he thinks I'm the, second coming of T-Mac, like some people have tried to proclaim, it's like, you're not, dude. You can be a great player, but it's going to take a willingness to play a role and a commitment to doing the little things and working. And I just don't know if he's there yet.
Yeah, I'm not an optimist. I am not a hater of the pick because the talent is so significant. I had him 6 on my board. I just didn't love it, and I would have preferred Trey Johnson. Speaking of which, how do you like what the Wizards did? I think they're another interesting team.
I like the direction the Wizards have chosen, getting McCollum. Hopefully they can hold on to Middleton, too, if he accepts his option. Getting some veterans in the room to help bring along some of these younger talents. Trey, to me, was the best player they could have drafted at the spot, and this team needs scoring punch. They were the worst offense in basketball last season, and guy gets buckets. I thought Trey Johnson was the best scorer in the draft. A lot of what you mentioned earlier. I think he's going to be a really good player in this league. And I like some of the young talent that Washington has accumulated. Koulibaly, Trey Johnson, Alex Sarr. Like, these are guys that I could see being real contributors on a winning basketball team in a few years. So I really liked the pick for Washington. It's I'm glad they got Trey instead of Ace. I thought Ace was going to end up in Washington.
They have got a solid pool of talent here. I think that Trey was clearly the best player on the board, and I think he's one of the most gifted scorers in the class. And I maybe wasn't the highest on him. Some people had him up at 3, up at 4, but I really like him here at 6, and I think he's the most dynamic offensive talent now in Washington. And even though they sort of have this dynamic where it's like, okay, there's a lot of mouths to feed for them too with Bub Carrington and whatnot, he is a guy who I think really can fit in anywhere just because he's such a great off-ball scorer, and that's a valuable thing. And then I also like them getting Will Riley. It's kind of funny because Will Riley does remind me some of Keyshawn George, who they just took in the draft, in the sense that they're like these bigger wing types who have pretty slight frames and like who have this potential as pull-up shooter, shot creators, and will take some high degree of difficulty shots. And then they've also got like some passing feel, but they do have the slight frames. I think that George was a better defensive prospect, but you also kind of wonder about both their ability to really get to the rim and whatnot. But he's a talented player. I mean, 6'8" with a 6'9" wingspan. I do think he's a really gifted shooter who's undersold by the numbers because he took some really difficult shots from beyond the arc. But he can get a shot off at just about any time because of that size. But he can also settle, and he doesn't have the burst or the strength, and he can struggle playing through contact because of that. But off ball, I really like him. I think that he handles the ball well. I think that he can find driving angles and he changes pace decently well. So if he has any sort of advantage, then he can be solid getting into the paint, and he's a decent rim finisher. And like, he does generally make the right decision with those basic reads as a passer. The problem is going to be really slight frame, lack of strength on both sides of the ball. Does that inhibit his ability to score inside the arc? Does that make him a target defensively off switches? Does that make it even difficult for him to like fight through screens? That's where you see the downside with him potentially. But I like the Trey move a lot. I'm solid with the Will Riley move. I don't love it, but overall I thought that this was a pretty good draft for the Wizards, who are starting to put together a nice little rebuild. Like, they've got some guys who I like, and I think that they're headed in a more positive direction. Is there anything else you want to say about this NBA draft, Logan? Who's your favorite guy left out there for day 2?
That's a good question.
Thanks, man. I like to ask questions.
Let me think on that. Do you have an answer?
I think that it's probably Rasheer Fleming. I'm pretty excited about him. I think that he's got a lot of intriguing tools where, first of all, he's got phenomenal length, 6'8" with a 7'5" wingspan, really good stock production, basically a steal and a half and a block and a half a game, and he shoots 39% from 3 on some legitimate volume, 74% from the line, and he's like an athletic, above the rim play finisher. So I think he's going to be more of a 4 than a 5, but to have those hands, that solid rim protection, and that interior athleticism and that perimeter shooting, I think in the second round, early second round, it's going to be a win for basically anybody to get him.
I think that's a good shout. I like him too. I think for me, it's maybe Cam Jones. I think some of Cam's efficiency numbers are a little deceiving too, just because of how much he had the ball in his hands and some of the. But that is kind of why I like him. Like, he's experienced as a ball handler. He's a good passer. Can get into the teeth of the defense. Good mid-range shooter. I just like him as a veteran. I don't even know if he's going to play a ton. You don't really know about any guys going in the second round if they're going to get a ton of burn. But he gets downhill a ton. He's a really good at-rim finisher. I really like him as an off-ball scorer and as a on-ball creator at some points. And I think he's got a really good inside the arc scoring game. If he is a good catch-and-shooter, I think you're getting a really good bench player. So for me, it's probably Cam. But I like Rasheer a lot, man. I think there's going to be some impact guys in the second round. I'm pretty excited for it. Although, I don't get why the hell we just didn't have. It would have been really convenient if we could have done a full winners and losers with a first and second round. But the NBA said, let's go two nights.
Look, man, not to be an old man yelling on my porch, but I do think it's stupid. Like, first of all, it's so different from the NFL, who they seem to be emulating, where they want to create this spectacle of, multiple nights. First of all, obviously the NFL has to do it. It's 7 rounds. You can easily fit an NBA draft into one night. They did it for years and years and years. And a second round pick, a third round pick in the NFL has the potential to be far more impactful than your average second round pick in the NBA, where a significant majority of those guys are not going to make it as rotation players in the NBA. Not a lot of people are going to tune in just to watch that.
Exactly.
On top of the fact that you can easily just fit it in with the first round.
Well,
and
I don't get how you're going to get people coming back just to watch the second. Because it's look, if I was watching the first round and then you guys just went right into it, I would watch that. I'm going to keep it a buck with you. I'm not going to be sitting in front of my TV going, ooh, who's going with the 40th pick? No, I'm just going to do it on my phone.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot that the NBA could improve in terms of draft presentation. I also just think, man, the NBA would benefit from a bit of a draft season. Now, obviously, they have their limitations because the schedule moves so fast, right? You get right into free agency, then you get right into summer league, so the players can have a couple of true months off before the season. But I think that part of what we could do here is maybe take away some of those finals rest days where we had basically 2 full days off between every single game. And then maybe, push back free agency and summer league just a little bit. I don't think this will happen. It's just, to me, crazy when we have a 2-day turnaround from Game 7 of the NBA Finals to the draft. I'm not saying it has to be a big difference, but can you add another week in there? Because if you do look at the NFL has a draft season, bro. They have months where it's all people talk about, and they're locked in, and they're excited, and they're engaged. And the NBA draft, it's kind of like, all right, here it is. And it really sneaks up on you. And I love the draft, so I would love to have more time to talk about it and bask in it. And instead, it just kind of happens like that. But this was a fun first round. I think this is a really exciting draft class. Hell of a lot better than last year. Some interesting stuff happened. Some crazy stuff happened. And we'll see how it all pans out. So, with that, as always, appreciate you guys tuning in. If you want more of our content, you can find it everywhere. YouTube, all of our full episodes. You can listen across all audio platforms. And you can follow us across social media, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at @nerd_sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, and all of our short-form trivia content where we get so silly. And you can join our Discord if you want to be part of our community and chat with the gang over there. 7 shows in 5 days, Logan. Nothing coming tomorrow. Nothing coming over the weekend. We'll be back on Monday, though. Free agency starting. That's going to be a whole lot of fun as well. And we will see you all then. So with that, appreciate you. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.